Hey everyone, welcome to the Summer Rewind edition of the ThinkEnergy Podcast. While we recharge our batteries during these lazy, hazy days of summer, we're bringing back some blasts from our podcast past. We'll be reintroducing some of the most popular interviews that garnered a lot of attention and interest. Perhaps not a coincidence, but they're all focused on the future of the energy sector with themes like renewable energy, green innovation, and being eco-conscious. So I hope you truly enjoy our Summer Rewind edition. In the meantime, have a happy summer, and we'll be back September 6th to kick off another exciting season of the ThinkEnergy Podcast. I'm Dan Sege from Hydro Ottawa, and I'll be hosting the ThinkEnergy Podcast. So here's today's big question. Are you looking to better understand the fast-changing world of energy? Join me every 2 weeks and get a unique perspective from industry leaders as we deep dive and discuss some of the coolest trends, emerging technologies, and latest innovations that drive the energy sector. So stay tuned as we explore some traditional and some quirky facets of this industry. This is the ThinkEnergy Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the ThinkEnergy Podcast. When we talk about electrification of transportation, we tend to think about electric vehicles, buses, or light rail transit. But there's another subset of electric transportation that is rapidly growing in popularity. With improvements to battery storage, we may just be entering a new golden age of transportation and mobility. Driven by a range of factors from climate change, technology, economics, and general consumer preference, the evolution of electric transportation is changing the landscape faster than we've seen in our history. Certainly, the awareness of our own responsibility to reduce our own overall impact on the environment is a significant factor. The accounting firm Deloitte says that 300 million electric bikes will be out worldwide by 2023, which is 50% more than today. Urban dwellers in particular are seeking convenient, eco-healthy, and affordable way to move around congested cities. A criticism has been that e-bikes don't contribute to exercise since the motor does most of the work for you. But a new University of Boulder, Colorado study shows that using an electrically powered bicycle on a regular basis can actually provide riders with an effective workout while improving some aspects of cardiovascular health, especially for riders who were previously inactive. The researchers noticed improvement in the rider's cardiovascular health, including increased aerobic capacity and improved blood sugar control. E-bikes and scooters are affordable now. They are efficient to operate, reduce congestion, and ease commute times. They do increase physical activity, and simply put, a lot of fun. Yes, e-bikes have higher emission than a regular bicycle, but they far outperform cars, including electric ones. Similar to EVs, e-bikes can help communities achieve their GHG emission reduction targets. What's interesting is that half of all e-bikes driving trips are shorter than 16 kilometers, with some averaging single trips of just 9 kilometers. That's a no-brainer distance to cover by e-bikes. Studies show that e-bike owners are replacing 46% of their car commutes and 30% of their driving errands with e-bike rides. Of course, like other electric forms of transportation, this takes support, buy-in, and infrastructure investments from municipalities. With supportive cycling infrastructure in place, e-bikes have the potential to substitute or completely replace almost all trips taken by a gasoline-powered car, which could address congestion and pollution issues and mitigate parking challenges within urban areas, especially for downtown dwellers. So here's today's big question. Are 2 wheels better than 4? In addition to tackling some of the myth surrounding e-bikes, are they the greenest transportation option when it comes to urban traffic and environmental impact? Joining me today is a very special guest, Seth Weintraub, an award-winning journalist and blogger. In 2003, Seth bought one of Tesla's first Model S EVs off the assembly line. This began his love affair with electric vehicles and green energy, which he turned into electric.co. Seth, I only scratched the surface of your bio in my introduction. Can you tell us a bit more about you, your work, and why electric transportation technology and the environment means so much to you?
All right. So my background is in engineering. I went to school for engineering, got my postgrad in engineering. But I started about 10 years after I began my career in writing about technology, and that started with Apple, and I started 9 to 5 Mac about 12 years ago, and then that expanded to Google and covering the wider technology range. My interest in clean energy kind of began. I got a Prius, but really kind of everything came together when I bought my first fully electric car, which was a 2013 Tesla Model S. I got it at the time. I started reading around about this product, which I thought was pretty incredible, and nobody was really talking intelligently about it, in my opinion, obviously. So I was like, hey, I know how to do a blog. I know how to write about technology. I'm going to start up Electrek. I didn't want to just say like start up another 9 to 5 Tesla kind of site. I wanted to kind of hit the wider spectrum. At the time, I was super interested in solar. We were putting solar on our house, so we get the full, the driving an electric car powered by the sun. At the time, Tesla wasn't a solar provider. They had Solar City, which is, kind of a preferred vendor at the time because Elon Musk owned both companies. But eventually Tesla integrated Solar City into the company. And there's a lot of other solar platforms out there. So it's just a super interesting thing. And it's kind of scary if we don't kind of figure out the getting fossil fuels out of our energy matrix. And so it's not just solar and electric cars. We like to talk about electric bikes in a big way. We talk about boats and trains and every other form of transportation and energy usage. And it's super interesting because it's changing so much right now. It's such a big part of the transformation that's going on around the globe. And obviously it's super important.
Now, I'd like to talk about electric bikes, which are gaining in popularity across the world. I'd be interested to hear about the technology behind e-bikes and break down any myth or misunderstanding about what they are and what are they not.
That's great. Electric bikes, in my opinion, are one of the big technology transformations happening right now. As a background, electric bikes used to be lead acid batteries, and kind of the change in cars from lead acid and nickel cadmium batteries to lithium batteries kind of worked its way down to electric bikes. So, 10 years ago, any electric bike you would find would probably be a lead acid battery. So big and heavy and kind of, not able to use the full potential of the battery. And that's gone down to these like bricks that are, pretty small and sometimes even fit into the frame of the bike. There's so much to talk about electric bikes. They started kind of in earnest about 5 or 6 years ago, becoming something that everybody can jump onto. Why are they great? So for me, I live in an extremely hilly area, but even if I didn't, the extra speed for me makes my commute more like a car commute. So I can go to my coffee shop or, to run my errands on regular roads that cars occupy. And I travel around 25 miles per hour. So even on big hills, a car doesn't overtake me very quickly, if at all. So for me, it's a safety issue. Like I travel more like a car. Cars aren't trying to pass me. They're not stressed out. They can't overtake me very quickly. But it also opens up biking to a broader swath of the population. So, if you have a 5 or 10 mile commute to work on a regular bike, you have to be quite fit, and you're probably going to expect to arrive at your destination pretty sweaty in a regular bike. But with an electric bike, you can kind of control how much assist you have. Some electric bikes have throttles, and there's a whole litany of what's legal where. But a throttle it almost turns it into like a moped where you don't even have to pedal if you don't want to. And obviously the breeze in the air keeps you cool. Like, it's 95, what is that, like 30 something Celsius um, out today. And everybody's like, I can't believe you're riding your bike. And I'm like, when you're going 25 miles per hour, like, it's pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of wind hitting you, and it's really not that bad of a commute. So there's just so many components to it. And, I'm probably going off on all different directions, but it just enables a much broader swath of the population to go much further, much faster, and much safer.
Okay, Seth, who is the main consumer of e-bikes? Is it the adventurer or the urban city resident looking for a quick commute? Are there different classes of e-bikes and levels of motor assistant? Can you maybe help me better understand the categories and the consumers?
Sure. So there's a lot of different consumers of e-bikes. You have younger folks who just want to go really fast. You have older folks who maybe their legs and hips aren't what they were at one point, and the e-bike makes it easier to go. That's city people. There's people who like high performance. There's e-bikes that are pretty much motorcycles with pedals, and they can go 30, 40 miles per hour. So I don't want to. There's not just one group of e-bike owners. They kind of cross the swath of the population. Um, so you alluded to urban city residents. Man, like, I live in the suburbs, but every time I go to New York City, I love having an e-bike. I can get around much faster than anybody. I mean, I can beat an ambulance across town quite easily. So for the urban people, like, you're just flying by traffic. There's no, obviously you don't want to blow any traffic lights and want to obey everything. But like, for the most part, you're going to be the fastest vehicle on the road. But for suburbanites like me, like, going to the store, for instance, one thing people don't think about is, like, you probably have to park pretty far away, and you have to, walk out to your car and do all this other stuff. And by the time you eliminate all, because when you ride an e-bike, you pull it out of your garage and you drive right up to the store. By the time you do all those things that you have to deal with, find a parking spot, drive around, whatever. By the time you do all that, you're pretty much getting to your destination at the same amount of time with an e-bike than you are with a car. So, for me, like, when I go somewhere in a car, I kind of just space out and forget about it. But when you're on an e-bike, it's like a ton of fun. You're, hitting the turns and flying and seeing how fast you can pedal. So it's just better in just about every other way. Obviously, when there's a lot of snow, when it's raining, that presents some issues. But it's just, as a human being, I think the experience is so much better. You're way more in touch with your environment. You're way more in touch with people around you. It's just better in every single way. So there's three official categories of e-bikes in the U.S., and then there's a kind of a fourth category that's unofficial. Category 1 is pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour. Category 2 is pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour with a throttle. Category 3 is pedal assist up to 28 miles per hour. And then there's kind of an unofficial category 4, which is a throttle up to 28 miles per hour. And then, in the EU, they have a kind of a different kind of motorcycle-ish, electric motorcycle-ish category up to around 35 miles per hour.
Thanks, Seth. What's the biggest obstacle and or opportunity for the mass adoption of e-bikes? Does it take a municipality to build an e-bike movement? Or where does it begin? Do e-bikes offer a transit solution that can be seamlessly integrated into sustainable city features?
I'm going to say like the roads, like safety is kind of like the number one thing, I think, keeping people off of bikes in general. But e-bikes are certainly a part of that. When bike specific lanes get put into cities, biking goes way up, safety goes way up. There's even bike lanes, like if you're on a street with a bike lane, there's still quite a few accidents that happen there. It's better than no bike lane at all, but having a dedicated walled off avenue for bikes is kind of the way to go. And that's one way of jump starting bikes. My personal belief is biking is going to start with people, like getting the word out, getting people educated, getting people on bikes. Like, I'm kind of a evangelist, so to speak. So, I drive my bike to the coffee shop every day, which is about 3 or 4 miles or 5 kilometers. So they, people see the bike and they want to ask questions. I'm like, hey, get on, go ride around, see what you think. And I probably sold, I don't know, 10 or 15 bikes, and just by putting somebody's butt on the seat. So I think if a city is looking for a way to get more people on bikes, they should probably just have events like, hey, come try out the bike, or hey, we're going to do e-bikes. You can rent a bike for, give it a try, free for a day, kind of thing. Obviously, Uber's Jump and Line Bike and all those are good ways for cities to kind of get into e-biking. Although I would say those bikes aren't a great experience. They're certainly better than the equivalent non-electric versions.
Now, e-bikes give us another device to charge. Are batteries getting better? How long can they last before recharging?
Great question. So e-bikes are certainly getting better. As batteries get better, the technology gets better. One thing I would like to see is e-bikes to adopt USB-C. So that's kind of the standard that your MacBook and your PC or laptops are using. Goes up to 100 watts. It would be nice if not only could they charge via USB-C, but they could, maybe, in the wintertime when you're not using your bike, you can use the battery as a backup for your home. So if your power goes out, you can use your laptop or power your phone. It adds more utility to the battery on your bike. So that's one thing I think that could make batteries better beyond the more charge. As far as how long can they last before charging, that's there's big batteries and small batteries and powerful batteries and non-powerful batteries. A typical battery for an e-bike on a typical e-bike would probably take you around 10 or 20 miles with some pedaling involved. There's bikes that go up to 100 miles, and there's bikes that probably you have trouble making it 5 miles. So you're going to want to check that out. Probably check out our review, maybe on electric, to see what real world range bikes get. But the least expensive bikes out there, a bike that costs like $700 on Amazon will take you 10 or 20 miles.
Here are 2 things I usually avoid talking about on this show: finances and weight. But I have to know, what is the cost range of an e-bike and how heavy are they? Now, having had to get one on a bike rack to a car, I can attest they're fairly heavy.
Yeah, so they're certainly heavier. I think a typical one will weigh around 50 pounds. And that's off probably about double what a typical non-electric bike weighs. The good news there is you can kind of just pull off a battery in a lot of cases. So like if you're putting it on the rack, you can pull off the battery, which is it'll bring it down to 35 pounds. You still have a heavy motor and some more heavy components that are going to make it a little heavier, but you can put the battery in your car while you're taking it out. So the cost range is another really tricky one. I mean, you can get very inexpensive ones down, $400 or $500, but those are the smaller tired ones, maybe the foldables, very low power, very small batteries. There's like four major North American, maybe five brands. Just off the top of my head, there's like Sondors, Evolo, Luna, Juiced, and probably the biggest one is Rad. So those typically cost like I just bought my father-in-law a Rad runner for I think around $1,100 US, and that's kind of a base model bike. It's got fat tires. And then, we got ourselves a Juiced Scorpion, which is kind of a more like a moped-y looking one. And that goes for around $1,500. That's going to be your range of like solid bikes, 1,000 to 1,500 is good. And then if you're looking for like bike store quality bikes, Trek, Specialized, you're looking at $2,000-$3,000. I'm currently, my daily driver right now is a Gazelle T10, which is a fantastic bike. All the power I need, but still is a biking type of experience. And that I think retails around $3,000 or $4,000 depending on the configuration. So pretty wide range.
Okay, let's move on. With the growing concern around preservation and sustainability for future generations, are electric bikes one of the most environmentally sound means of motorized transportation in the world today?
Absolutely. And, I didn't allude to it earlier, but when you think about how much power you actually need to get, the 5-10 mile commute that you do every day, compared to even an electric car, it's a small fraction. So for instance, for an entire week of going, I do a lot of my work at the coffee shop in town. For an entire week, I can go off of one 500 watt hour battery. So, in comparison, that would drive my Tesla probably about a mile. So, I'm going, I don't know, 20 times as far as you can go in a car on the same amount of energy. So, if everybody rode a bike instead of, even an electric car, and then, obviously gasoline cars are much worse on the environment than that. But just even compared to an electric car, an electric bike is so much more fuel efficient. Obviously 20 people could ride bikes for one person riding a car in terms of energy usage.
Thanks to our green space and dedicated bike lanes, our great city, Ottawa, has a thriving cycling community. What cities in the world are leading the e-bike movement through policy and planning? Where are the success stories that Canada can learn from?
I think the world leader in biking, or at least in the Western world, would probably be Amsterdam. They kind of took a look way back in the 50s and 60s at their car culture city and kind of reinvented their city around biking and pedestrian traffic. And obviously the city's much better for it. Each city is different. I've been to some places like even Berlin. It had a great way to get around on bikes. There's like dedicated bike lanes in every area. I lived in Paris for a year. They had, or a couple of years, they had something called the Velib there, where this was way early, maybe 10, 15 years ago, before all the Lime bikes and the Uber jumps. And you just rent a bike from any spot, within a few blocks, and you can go to any other spot within a few blocks. their roads weren't as bike friendly, but they had at least a system to get on a bike and get off a bike really easily. So that's my experience. Unfortunately, the U.S. doesn't have too much to offer there. Um, you know, we're a very car culture type of place. I'm trying to think. I don't remember Toronto being a very bike centric area. Although I did enjoy a long bike ride in Vancouver, so maybe that's somewhere else to look.
And Seth, what about e-scooters? What are your thoughts?
Well, I would argue. So I've used e-scooters. I would argue that bikes are way safer. You're just standing versus sitting. You're actually getting some exercise on a bike. Scooters are, with their smaller wheels, not as adept at hitting potholes and stuff like that. I mean, I like scooters. They're energy efficient compared to cars. They're not taking up nearly as much space. But for me personally, my experience on a bike is much better than a scooter.
Seth, other than the demand for environmentally friendly products, what are the major factors that have contributed to the widespread adoption of electric bike growth in recent years? Do geography and culture play a part?
Geography definitely plays a part. Certainly, hills make electric bikes more appealing. Culture, in the sense that if you see somebody riding an e-bike, you become more open to riding one yourself. If your friends and family pick one up, then you're going to probably give one a try. Other factors that contribute, I think, as I mentioned before, more out there kind of breeds more adoption, and certainly like the technology getting better. The prices of really good batteries are coming down because of all the electric cars and other innovations happening. So it's a combination of things. I'm trying to think of other stuff. Hopefully, websites like ours are bringing electric bikes to the forefront. Maybe you're a Tesla person and you're like, hey, I like reading Electric for the Tesla coverage, but there's all these really awesome e-bikes we see. Maybe I'll pick one of those up too and throw it in my trunk.
Now, what's it like to ride an e-bike in traffic? Numerous studies identify the issues of safety as the key barrier to e-bike adoption. The two primary safety issues are: one, the actual safety of the e-bike itself, including its higher operating range relative to a regular bicycle, and two, safely riding an e-bike on the road. Seth, how can these concerns be addressed, and what should beginners know?
So that I agree with that. I think we talked about it earlier about safety being the probably the biggest barrier to e-bike adoption. If you are going to ride on roads, obviously speed kills. The faster you go, when you have an accident, the more likely you're going to get hurt. But the flip side of that is that if you're riding your bike and you're behaving more like a car, you'll get treated more like a car. So instead of riding, on the white line on the right side of the road, you ride in the middle of the road and you're riding the speed limit. So, if you're in a 25 mile per hour zone or 35 mile per hour zone and you're actually going close to the speed limit, cars aren't going to feel the need to overtake you. So you can kind of become one of them on the road. Just kind of like a motorcycle would kind of think of itself as a road citizen. So that for me is the big difference. When I ride around town, or people don't try to overtake me because I'm riding the same speed as cars. Obviously, when somebody sees somebody on a bike, they're in the car, their first thought is, oh crap, I gotta figure out a way to get around this guy. But if I'm riding in the middle of the road and I'm going the speed limit, there's really no reason to try to get around me, and they just kind of settle in behind me, hopefully.
Okay, Seth. How about we close off this podcast with rapid fire questions? I hope you are ready.
Oh God. Yeah.
What is your favorite word?
Electrification.
What is one of the things you can't live without?
I'm going to get sappy and say family.
What is something that challenges you?
Well, my day-to-day is publishing, so I'm going to probably go with Google's publishing world.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Just flying would be fine.
If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Relax. Maybe things are going to come together pretty good. I don't know. I kind of feel like there was a lot of anxiety around 18. So one of those, don't get too discouraged.
And lastly, what do you currently find most interesting in your sector?
So for us, what's super interesting is that we are, at a crossroads. So what's interesting to us is we know where we're going to be in a few years. We know that, Norway is a good example. They're kind of ahead of the curve. They're 60% of the cars they buy, and obviously a lot of their bikes are electrified. We know we're going to get there, but it's always interesting to see how we're going to get there. It's interesting watching people's minds change. I was at a socially distant dinner party last night, and somebody who I had no idea was interested in electric vehicles was like, yeah, I got to get an electric bike, and I know my next car is going to be electric. And I was like, oh, this is kind of going mainstream now. So that's kind of what's super interesting for me.
Well, Seth, we reached the end of another episode of the ThinkEnergy Podcast. Last question for you. How can our listeners learn more about you? How can they connect?
So visit electric.co. I'm there. We have a podcast every Friday. And I'm LL Seth J on Twitter. That's kind of my outlet of choice for non-story items.
Again, Seth, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of the ThinkEnergy Podcast. For past episodes, make sure you visit our website, hydroottawa.com/podcasts. Lastly, if you found value in this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Anyway, this podcast is a wrap. Cheers, everyone.